What is going on today, guys? My name's Alex. Welcome back to the channel. Today we are back once again with the F-250 with the 6.7 liter Powerstroke, because last week I screwed up the towing test, and this week we're back at it. We're gonna do it right, and we're really gonna see what this 6.7 liter Powerstroke is all about. So stay tuned. All right, like you guys just heard and can see, we are back with the 2023 F-250 with the notorious 6.7 Powerstroke in her. And in fact, this is the exact same truck I had last week, and there's a reason for that because, well, I kind of screwed up. And so last week I towing about 16,500 pounds behind this bad girl. And the towing was just very uncomfortable. There's a lot of trailer sway. I had believed that since I had about 1,600 pounds of tongue weight on this truck, about 10%, that I was totally in spec with my trailer, and that it had to do something with the truck because there was no other reason. We are right within 10%, and this thing is so uncomfortable on the road. It is not fun to drive right now. So a little disappointing. Thankfully, as many of you guys pointed out in my comments from last week's video, that was completely incorrect. And I'm here today to right my wrong, and we'll talk about what went wrong, why the trailer was swaying, and why it was my own fault. And then we will take this truck back on the road and give it an actual true towing test the way it should have been performed last week. So that's what we're doing today. I want to thank the official apparel sponsor of the channel, Old North Co. They are a local London, Ontario company founded by two sisters. They have a great selection of outdoor Canadian designs in t-shirts, sweaters, hats. They even have cool stuff for your dogs. If you guys are interested, put a 10% discount code down below, so check them out. Now, I get stuff wrong on this channel from time to time, and thankfully you guys usually point out what that is. But I really felt obligated to address this specific problem because it was completely my fault, and it's just not fair to you guys, the subscribers, as well as the viewers. And then secondly, I just don't think it's fair to Ford. Obviously, this is not a really big channel, but one can dream, and I would hate to kind of, you know, for lack of a better term, bash a manufacturer when in fact it had nothing to do with them and it was completely my own fault. Right off the bat, being completely honest, when I towed with the Duramax 2 weeks ago with all those concrete blocks, the video just did not really do that well, and it was a little concerning. So I thought maybe it would be a little more appealing to throw my own truck, my Ram Power Wagon, up on the trailer, kind of like the boys at TFL do, and they seem to do pretty well. So I figured that would be a good approach and maybe get some more interest in the video. And so that's what I did. And first of all, as you guys saw, I put the truck on, you know, facing forward, and it kind of just buried this front end with the engine right up kind of on the tongue. And that was a little concerning to me. So what did I do? I flipped the truck around, backed it on, and I felt that was a little more appropriate for the tongue weight because this truck only has a payload of about 2,100 pounds, I believe. So not too much payload to play with. And then the next 5 final nails in the coffin was putting those two 2,500 pound blocks on the back of the trailer, behind the rear axles. It looked to me, and the numbers did eventually show, that I was well within my 10% tongue weight. And like I said, I thought I was going to be fine with that. But a comment that completely struck home why I was wrong was someone mentioned how when I measured that tongue weight, the tongue weight was a stationary measurement. 100% true, the truck was not moving. So when the load is not on the axles, in fact, it's on the back of the trailer, when the truck is moving and hit a bump, that load is going to have a teeter-tottering effect, something that I just did not take into consideration. Whereas if the load was over the axles, you wouldn't get that teeter-tottering effect, and the tongue weight would stay much more true to what the stationary measurement measured. The one nice thing about the internet, I guess, is when you are wrong, you'll find out really quickly, usually, and it is a little bit humbling, so that's always good to see. Secondly, we're gonna make these towings a little bit more scientific, and I'll tell you how. So instead of trying to tow the max trailering weight of each truck I review, I think what I'm going to do is have just a standard weight for 1500, 2500, and 3500s. So 1500s is gonna be about 9,100 pounds. 2500s, gas or diesel, is gonna be about 14,500 pounds, and then 3500s is gonna be 20,000 pounds of weight. And I'm gonna keep that standard across the board because then we can kind of tell the difference between each engine and how the truck tows. The other thing, obviously, is my route is going to be the exact same, so that's good. Good for fuel mileage, and other stuff like that. Now, thirdly, I'm going to mark, well, you guys can't see the trailer, it's out there, but I'm gonna mark exactly where each block goes for my 1500, 2500, and 3500 runs, giving us the exact same tongue weight, as well as the exact same load characteristic for each truck run. That way, any measurements we take, like how much the truck is going to squat, fuel economy, like I mentioned, acceleration, the load behind the truck is going to be the same across the platforms, which I think is going to be really beneficial in terms of reviewing a truck and seeing how it tows in comparison to its competition. So that is what we're going to do moving forward, and I think that is going to bring a much more scientific viewpoint to these towing reviews, which I'm excited about. Hopefully I didn't bore you guys too much with that little spiel there, but I figured it was important to address that. And anyways, moving on, this is the 6.7 Powerstroke in here, pumping out 475 horsepower as well as 1,050 pound-feet of torque. And this is the standard output edition. There is a high output edition with even more power, which one day we'll get to review, which I'm excited about. But this thing is an absolute beast. And you'll see when we have the trailer fully loaded up behind this thing, how easy it makes it look towing, because this thing just has so much power, so much torque down low. It is crazy. So I'm excited about that, excited to get her back on the highway. Speaking of which, I think it's time that we take this thing out, get the trailer all loaded up, and go from there. So let's do that. All right, so right away, this load looks a little bit less complicated than last week. Super simple. We got 4 blocks, weigh about 2,400 pounds each. We will know for certain when we hit the scales in a second here when we go down the road. But yeah, as you guys can see, I got my rear blocks kind of split right between the two rear axles. And I have my front 2 blocks slightly more ahead than my front axle, because I do want a good amount of weight on the tongue, but that front axle is going to take up some weight as well. So that is looking pretty good in my opinion. We will know for sure when we hit the scales, and I'll know all my tongue weight and all that fun stuff. Ideally, we are in a perfect setup here, and you know, when I get back, I'll mark each block, I'll mark exactly where it goes. So in future towing tests with 2500s, we'll know exactly where to load, how to load, and so the trailer doesn't even factor. It's all about the truck, which is I think what you guys want to know most. Now lastly, before we get going on the road here, as you guys can see, hopefully, if I'm not in the way, the trailer is slightly nosediving. The concrete floors don't help it at all here, but that's what I mean. I've ordered a special thing that can actually raise the pintle hitch up, and therefore we get a perfectly level towing trailer, which is ideal. So we'll deal with that eventually when it comes in the mail. But let's get this thing on the road, and we'll see the difference in towing with a proper load behind it. So I'm excited. All right, we are off on the second towing test with this F-250. We got her in tow haul mode, exhaust brake is on, and we're gonna rip this thing down the highway. Hopefully a much better towing experience, and I'm excited. I think it will be. Okay, about to hit the highway. This is where things went awry last time very quickly. I don't have anyone behind me here, so we're cruising at 60 kilometers an hour, and we will put the foot to the floor. Oh, plenty of power. Plenty of power. Now we're going to set our cruising speed at 110 kilometers an hour. That is the speed limit. No point in going faster, and I think that is a pretty good cruising speed. So that's what we are going to do. So far, this thing feels incredibly different, much more solid, and yeah, tons of power out of this Powerstroke, but you guys already know that. Okay, we have only been on the road for about 7 kilometers here, and without a doubt, last week's towing was 100% my fault. This thing is solid as a rock. Yes, we have about 2,000 pounds less weight on here, but we are also going 10 kilometers an hour faster. So we'll put this thing on cruise, and we'll see how this thing does the rest of the towing test. But I imagine it's going to be pretty flawless, judging by just how smooth she's going already, just 10 kilometers in. Look at that load right there, making a big pass on the Ford Ranger. That's a big trailer. I don't know. He might not be able to pull that up this hill. Jesus. Atta boy. Now, a couple cool things that are very unique to the Powerstroke, which I touched on a little bit last week, is, well, first of all, is the reverse of the intake and exhaust flow. On a normal V8, typically a naturally aspirated V8, as well as the Duramax, your intakes are on the inside of the bank and your exhaust on the outside of the banks. Like I said, very traditional. But what Ford has done is they have slapped the turbo dead center of the banks, and they have put the exhaust on the inside of the banks and the intakes on the outside. Now, there's a couple benefits of doing that, which include an increase in thermal efficiency and a minimization of pumping loss. Basically what that translates to is that there is less energy loss in the process of getting to the turbo, and more of that energy is transferred into mechanical energy going down to your wheels. And that's one thing I really like about this Powerstroke. Another nice feature of this Powerstroke is in 2020, Ford introduced a fully electronic VGT turbo, variable geometry turbo, and having a fully electronic VGT means that your turbo responses are going to be lightning fast. And well, we're not really in any boost right now, but once we come up to that hill there, I'll show you, it'll just be like that. We'll gain boost, as you guys can see the boost gauge there, and we'll just keep on pumping. Another cool touch Ford did to this 6.7 liter Powerstroke diesel is in 2020, they implemented steel pistons. Super cool. I've talked about this a couple times, but Ford realized that yes, steel is heavier, and it's not really great to have a heavier rotating mass in the engine. It can, you know, throw off balance and all that fun stuff. But what they realized is that since steel is so much stronger than a typical aluminum piston, which is what was in these engines previously, is that you can use a lot less of it. So the end result is a steel piston that weighs almost identical to what the original aluminum piston weighs. It weighs a little bit more, but with that slightly added weight, you get a much stronger piston, which can have much higher heat tolerances, as well as obviously pressure tolerances than aluminum pistons. Now, along with having a smaller, shorter piston, Ford also had to make new connecting rods, and they beefed those babies up as well. So you do get a pretty strong bottom end rotating assembly in this Powerstroke. So we're dropping down into the valley here. We'll see how well this truck can maintain 110 kilometers an hour. The exhaust brake on this engine is actually pretty good. It's pretty noticeable. On the Duramax, did not really feel too noticeable until you got to like 3,000 RPM. So we'll see what this thing can do with that weight pushing her down the hill here. So we're creeping up past 110. Let's see if it'll keep us in range here. About 115 kilometers an hour. Okay, we downshifted, 2,000 RPM, 8th gear. Seems to be keeping us at 115. I don't like that we're not staying at 110, but you can definitely feel that exhaust brake holding you back a little bit. Not bad, not bad. Downshifted 2 gears. Well, we've made it to the halfway point. We're at the truck stop. We're gonna weigh this thing just over there in a second. But yeah, she is performing much, much better than last time. And I think that's to be expected. Straps are tight. She's good, she's good. Hubs, yeah, they feel good, feel good. Yeah, perfect, perfect. All right, so we got our trailer and truck working in good combination this time. This thing is running real good, trailer's running real good, and we're gonna see how much this thing actually weighs. You can see the truck, it's actually sitting nice and level, which is perfect. The trailer is not sitting level, but like I said, I got something on order that we can lift that up and make that level and have a perfect truck and trailer combination for future tests. All right, let's jump on the scale here. Pounds, please.
What's your truck number?
Number 1.
When you see the green light, you can pull on the scale.
Thank you. Got my scale weight. We are basically right at 14,000 pounds, which is not a bad weight. I might just keep it there. We'll see. But yeah, tongue weight is in spec. We are basically right at 10%, which is good. And this thing is towing like an absolute dream. So I think we have a pretty good setup behind us for future 2,500 pulls, which I'm excited about. We are pulling out of our halfway checkpoint here, the Irving gas station. Gotta love it. And we're gonna make our way down river, head back to the shop. All right, we're jumping on the highway. Once again, we'll do a pull from 60 to 110 and see how this thing does. All right, to the floor. Slight uphill too. And 110, there we go. We were going a little uphill, so she was a little slower than the first time we did it, jumping on the highway back in Fredericton, but amazed how much power and speed is still in this engine with 14,000 pounds behind her. It's impressive. Now, I am also excited to get some gasser engines towing this trailer. Now, that's really the main reason why I've kept the 2,500 towing number so low. I think we're gonna stick at 14,000 pounds because the Chevy 2500 with the 6.6 liter gas engines, the max towing capacity in terms of a conventional tow is only 14,500 pounds. So that is why the 2,500 number is so low. And thankfully, the 3500s, we can go up to 20,000 pounds to really, put some pressure on these diesel engines, because I agree with you guys, 14,000 pounds for a modern diesel engine in these pickup trucks is just really nothing. But it'll be fun to compare the diesel engine at 14,000 pounds to in the 2500 platform to a gas engine at 14,000 pounds to really, and I think it'll really show why people desire these diesels despite the modern after treatment system, if they are really looking for a good towing truck, because the diesel engines just make a world of a difference. And I think we'll see that when I get some gas V8s on here. We are coming to our big pull of the run. It's really not that big, as a lot of you guys have pointed out, but it is a couple minutes of some decent grade, and it usually gives these engines a little bit of a workout, so it's always fun to see them pushing through. I don't even think this Powerstroke is going to even need to come out of an overdrive gear, which again is insane, but there is so much power coming to this engine. It would not surprise me. But first we got to get down there. Oof, downshifted to, oh, 6th gear. Really making this engine work to keep that speed. 3,100 RPMs. That's pretty high for a diesel. But it's good. That exhaust brake working well, keeping us in spec, 110 kilometers an hour. And we will see what this engine does going up the valley hill here. So 109 kilometers an hour, lost a little bit of speed there. 9th gear. See our turbo boost has come up quite a bit. 108, 107, Ford. There we go, downshift, 8th gear, still in overdrive gear. We're really boosting now, as you guys can see. There we go, we're back 110. Wow, so 8th gear. Pretty impressive. Yeah, she's just gonna stay the course here. Just a hair under 2,000 RPM. And she's just gonna work her way up this hill. Not much to her. Not much to her. Makes it look too easy. And just like that, we are up the hill with no drama. But that's what I expected. Now, I know I've said a lot of good things about this Powerstroke, and I do think it actually is a pretty solid diesel engine. But there is one sticking point for me, and that is the CP4 fuel pump that Ford puts on these engines. I don't know why they do. GM went through the ringer with their LML Duramax from like 2011 to 2016, I believe is the era of those generations of Duramaxes. And they had the Bosch CP4 fuel pump on it, and it imploded left, right, and center. And when those fuel pumps explode, break, fail, they take out the whole fueling system, which can be like $10,000 to $15,000 of damage. And there's really no ifs, ands, or buts. If it does fail, you need to replace your whole fuel system, because on modern diesel engines, in fact, any really diesel engine, the fuel system is so complex, and the tolerances and the pressures of these fuel systems are extreme. So any little bit of metal shavings just ruins the whole thing. And that's what was happening with the Bosch CP4 fuel pumps, is they were allegedly made for only low sulfur diesel fuel. Now in North America here, we use what's called ultra low sulfur diesel fuel. So there's obviously less sulfur content in it. And when it comes to diesel fuels, I'm obviously not a chemist, but from what I've been reading, the sulfur almost acts as a lubricant to the diesel. And so obviously with less of that sulfur as lubricant, it is what is wearing the pumps. Now, Ford does not experience as many CP4 fuel pump failures as GM did, so there is something to be said there, but I would never trust it after the absolute debacle GM went through, and they're still facing class action lawsuits against that. And it's no wonder in 2017 GM completely switched up their fuel system and no longer has any Bosch products on their Duramax in terms of fueling system. So it is a mystery why Ford still uses the CP4 fuel pump. It's something that would definitely be a sticking point for me if I was going to be looking at buying this engine. 80 to the floor. $110. Yeah, that's again, this engine just has so much power. I don't know. I mean, it's going to be really, really interesting between this and a Cummins. I mean, the Duramax, plenty of power, but it's just not the same, I guess is a good way to put it. I mean, no hate on the Duramax. I think it's a great engine. It's built very well from what I can find, but it just doesn't seem to have that same sort of pep in its step than the Powerstroke and the Cummins. Now, obviously, I haven't towed a heavy load with a modern Cummins before, so we'll have to see about that. But as for the Powerstroke, this thing's got some punch, man. It's got some punch with a load behind it. So, whew, Now we are nearing the end of our route here. We've driven 185 kilometers so far. Fuel economy is 18.7 liters per 100 kilometers, which is actually really good. I mean, these diesels, they are quite efficient, especially when it comes to towing. I think it'll be really fun when we get a gas engine out here in a 2500 and see what it gets for fuel economy. I imagine it'll be much further north than that, but that's the beauty of what I'm trying to do here, is just, you know, have the same loaded trailer for every 2500. That way, when it comes to fuel economy numbers, it's a direct comparison, because we're gonna run the exact same loop, same kilometers, same conditions, right? Because we go there and we come back. So if we're facing a heavy headwind, we'll have, you know, a heavy tailwind on the way back. So that shouldn't matter. So that's what I'm really excited about. All right, we made her back to the yard. She's a little windy out, but yeah, wow, what a difference it made with a different load setup. This thing was solid as a rock, even though it's not a Chevy, it's a Ford. How dare I? Yeah, no, this thing was super easy to drive on the highway, like it should have been the first time, but you know, live and learn, as I've said many times in this video. So we'll get this stuff unloaded, and then I will give you guys my second conclusion about this Super Duty, and it's going to be a little bit different than last week, that's for sure. Well guys, the conclusion is pretty simple. This thing tows very well. It handled this 14,000 pounds with complete ease. Most of the time, as you guys saw, going up hills, this thing was still in an overdrive gear, which is a little bit crazy. Now, in terms of towing comfortability, once I had my load correct, finally, this thing towed like an absolute dream. It was super solid. I felt incredibly confident, and I could just drive and focus on the road, focus on making a video, and not having to worry about putting this thing in the ditch or in the median. Now, the good news is we are starting to really kind of dial in this whole trailering thing and really bring some science to it. So when we do get other trucks with this trailer behind it, we can really see where the benefits and the disadvantages of each truck kind of lie when it comes to towing, which is exactly what I'm looking to do. Next week, ideally I'd want to get a 2500 gasser in front of this trailer, that or maybe even a 1500 gasser, obviously, and I think that would be fun. But that's what we're doing next week. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this little redemption video, and if you did, don't forget to leave that thumbs up. And if you like cool stuff like this, don't forget to subscribe. But like I mentioned, we're on the right track, and we're really gonna get this trailering dialed in and really show you guys the pros and cons of each truck, which I think will be really fun. But as always, enough of me, and we'll see you in the next freaking video.